He has significant international experience in Europe and Asia. Today, he is
first of all, I want to thank WPI for having me here to talk about the Darmann story. In the interest of time, I'll try to make this as quick as I can. What is different about our story is that we are a very, very small company. Very different, I think, than what you've heard so far today. And the problems that we face are problems that are different. So I'm going to give you our story, which is by no means perfect, but it is general working. The other thing that's different about us is that we are effectively a startup. We've been in China for 3 years, so we're kind of new at this, and we're learning every day as we move through the process of creating what we hope is a great company. A little bit about our company. We are like Nitro, we are an ESOP, so we have a lot of employees. Well, we don't have a lot of employees, but the employees we do have do care about how we conduct business, and jobs, and all of those things. And probably more than your typical business. We are only 60 people worldwide. We are minuscule compared to some of the other companies you've heard speak today. About 45 of those people are in the United States, and most of the balance are in China. We expect that number to increase to somewhere around 2025 in the next couple of months. We have, I'm going to say we virtually, other than myself, we have almost no experience internationally. Now, we have done some selling when I first came to the company a few years ago, we had about 15% of our sales were international. Today that number is 43%. But we didn't have a lot of people who had experience with different cultures, with setting up operations, with selling internationally, all of those kind of fundamental skill sets. Today we have operations in the United States and China, and also a very small sales and distribution operation in Poland. It's also, I think, important to talk a little bit about the industry we operate in. We sell products to the bearing, auto, medical companies. We do other things. Those are the primary markets that we serve. And we operate in a mature industry in the United States. And that industry is more and more moving capacity offshore. That said, we have a large market niche. We have a large share of a very small market niche. We continue to, in the last 5 years, we've continued to take market share, but that said, it's a small market that we operate in the United States. Here's some pictures of the products we make. We have about 1,000 specifications and probably something in the order of 15,000 separate customizable products we sell to our customers. What we do is we make precision super finishing and grinding tools that people use to put very precise finishes on things like bearings and auto parts. It's important to the Chinese market because one of the driving forces in that market is to improve the quality of their products so that they can access more and more markets, and they can reduce the scrap that many of these companies incur, which is huge. So quality and the quality tools that we make is a really important driving factor. Here's kind of a summary. I've tried to color code it for you, but basically here's what we've done the last 2 years. I've divided it into sales and marketing, operations, and financial. Those bullets that are marked in green are the ones that I'm very proud of. I think we've done a really good job. The ones in red, not so much, blue somewhere in between. So in the area of sales and marketing, we've established a solid sales organization. We've developed brand recognition. One of the things we've done is we've used the companies that we sell to as a way to kind of leverage our very small company into something that has got a much bigger presence and awareness in the Chinese market. So when I talk to bearing companies about SKF and Timken and NSK, all of whom are customers of ours, people take notice. We've developed specific products to the market. I'll talk a little bit more about this in a minute. We have about 51 customers, which for us is pretty good. So all in all, from the sales and marketing point of view, I'm pretty proud of what we've done. Operations has been a little bit more of a challenge for us. We've had limited technical support. One of the problems you have as a small company, one of the problems specifically we've had, is I have basically been not only the guy in charge of making most of this happen, but I retain the role as senior sales guy and applications engineer and CFO and a number of other hats, which is probably not the way you want to do it if you have the resources and capabilities to deploy more staff. From a financial point of view, we're generating cash, which is always good, and we weathered what for us was an awful recession in China, far worse than it was in the United States or Europe. Very interesting. We've had customers, we've had customers who did not order any product from us for 15 months. Not one single product. We sell a product that typically people would order on a regular, at least monthly basis. So it was a very, very severe recession for some of our customers. Again, we're growing pretty well, 300% about this quarter, and we basically self-finance this operation. The SME challenge, and we are clearly more S than M in this chart. The China decision. I know one of the problems that I've seen with people I've talked to is when you have 60 employees, when you're a small company with lots of stuff to do, this is a huge decision to make. I have a group of about 10 guys who run businesses that I meet with periodically. A couple of years ago, I told them what I was planning to do. And I've gone from, I don't think we're big enough, to I think we need to do this. And so I made my little speech, my little presentation, and one guy said, I think you're betting the farm. And quickly joining in were most of the other guys in the group. This seemed like such a daunting task for that group, for many small companies, that it's inconceivable that you can go from Clinton, Massachusetts to China. It takes a big commitment. I know personally I've spent probably 35% of my time in the last 3 years making sales calls, doing a variety of things in order to make this operation work. If I hadn't, because of the way we're structured, because we don't have a lot of internationally competent folks, this never would have happened. A lot of problems, some of which we've touched on, is lack of organizational depth, lack of financial resources, the tendency by many small companies to be very, very focused on the United States market and not really feel comfortable or understand or have the appetite to have to learn new markets. You get less interest from the Chinese government, from banks, from other people who can help you in China. We've gotten very little help, and I don't mean that as a way of complaining. I'm just saying we are a small company that is a lot less attractive to many local governments. So you're not going to get big packages helping you with taxes or other things. Banks are not going to finance you. Banks are primarily focused on state-run enterprises, and they're not going to help you particularly provide anything that looks at all like seed capital for a company like us to start up. So you're kind of on your own. Critical success factors for me have been take a long-term view. We're kind of doing this one step at a time. Be constantly engaged, and you got to be constantly willing to learn. It's a big problem, particularly for my organization. I've had a fair amount of international experience, but I've got a lot of guys who were born and raised in Clinton, Massachusetts, and they're really not that anxious to travel to China or Poland or anywhere else. So the strategy that's emerged for us basically is growth, largely through international expansion. We've really focused not just in China but elsewhere. So the China strategy that emerged from the work that we've been doing is the following: to focus on the domestic market. We quickly realized that we sell, I won't get into it, but we sell a product that is very difficult to export into the country. We really, it became clear early on we needed to make it there. The selling proposition was to sell excellent products with excellent service, but at a price point that was appropriate for the Chinese market. Now, anybody who spent much time in China realizes that many customers there just don't want to pay a lot of money. It's a religious thing. They just do not want to pay a lot of money. So you are not going to be able to charge premium prices unless you have a superior technology. Now, we clearly have a better technology, but it becomes very difficult to convince many customers in China that they should pay up for what we can do. We wanted to create a strong brand recognition, and even though we're a tiny company, I would argue that we have a broader product line and excellent brand recognition, far better than the size of our company. If some of our customers, some of our prospective customers, knew the size company we would have, probably would not treat us as well as they do. But we're thought of as a premier, maybe the premier supplier of supervision products in China and the world. The approach that I've taken is kind of a phased implementation. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this in the next slide, but I wanted to first understand the market, and then as we prove the case on each of these phases, we go on to the next step. It is a fairly loose approach compared to the approach that I'm sure many of you have taken if you're there or are planning. And certainly, earlier in my career, I did planning for a very, very large company, and we put together 1,000-page documents reviewed by hundreds of people, and it was a very, very precise way to go about it. But we can't afford to do that given how we're constructed. If I have one message, it's clearly understand your market. If you're Apple or if you're Starbucks or other very well-recognized American names, you'll have a much easier route to setting up a business and starting to sell your products in China. In our case, we sell an industrial product to a niche market. And we had to go we had to block and tackle our way through this process in a little bit different way. First thing was to understand the basic market. Now, for those of you who sell industrial products or products like ours, there's not a lot of published information. You can find directories of bearing companies and things, but there's not really a lot of help. So that was probably one. I visited some customer plants and went on a trade missions a few years ago to get an idea of different areas in China. Customers were helpful, but we weren't doing a lot of business, so it was somewhat a small sample. And then we utilized the services of an organization called AMT. I heard somebody mention AMT earlier. And what AMT gave us was the ability to set up shop in Shanghai and hire an employee whose principal task for the first probably year was to learn more about the market. Very cheap, very good way to go about it. I think we paid about $5,000 for the service for the first year. And it was a terrific way for us to get our feet in the ground and get immersed in the market. So that first year we went through, we continue to do it, but the first year we spent a lot of time really drilling down and understanding the market. The first thing that we came to realize is for us it's a three-tier market, and I think this applies to lots of markets. There are state companies, there are international companies, and then there's this emerging class of private companies. For our business, the state companies are very difficult to sell, very much focused on things other than making money or business. For example, I went to the largest bearing company in the world, a company called Lumiang Bearing. They have 25,000 employees, and I was there visiting with the general manager, and he was complaining that he just got 5,000 new recruits assigned to him the day before. And I said, well, what are you going to do with 5,000 new people? He said, well, I don't know. I'm going to have to cut the lawn this week. So there's public policy issues as well as business that tend to permeate these organizations. The international companies are pretty easy to deal with because they operate in many ways a lot like what we're used to in the United States. But the real big enchilada for us became clear was this emerging class of local entrepreneurs who were really where the energy in the market was. We identified a product set that worked. It wasn't everything we sell. It was those that I thought were important for that market. Needed to understand the the customer buying influences, and the more complex subject, but the thing that really sold me on China was more and more moving towards adopting better quality practices and producing better quality products. That played directly to the products we had. We wanted to price our product at an appropriate price point, a point that was less than some of our foreign competitors, but more than the local guys. We did some cuts at the size of the market. I know these are terribly small markets for most of you, but what I found was the market is approximately twice the size of the U.S. market. I could be off by a lot, but it was certainly big enough to get my interest. And then we defined and developed the sales and country strategy. One of the things that happened to us is when we hit the recession, my strategy was we're going to sell to international companies. Great strategy, we got a running start, it's going to work well. Then the recession hit, and that business dried up. So we had to pivot in about February of last year and start putting our focus on these local companies because there was no international business to have. Phase 3 was after we made the decision that we needed to have a manufacturing facility there, that the appropriate structure for us was a WOFE, joint ventures. I heard someone say that joint ventures, I've never heard anybody come across one that worked, and I kind of had the same view of it. And we didn't know any partners. I didn't know how to find somebody that I could get to know and trust fast enough to move forward, so we were sort of stuck with a WOFE. We had to hire and train staff and develop new products for the China market. This is a set of products that we had been selling for some time in small quantities for specialized applications in the United States. So, for example, a bearing company might use these kind of stones for a bearing used in a dental drill, that kind of thing, or an aerospace application. But typically, they pay a lot of money for it, relatively speaking, and they wouldn't buy a lot of them. It would be used in a batch process in a very different way than that same market in China. The market in China, 50% of the bearing market is made up of these small ball bearings. But rather than use these ball bearings for the aerospace industry and high-end applications, they were used for skateboards, hard disk drives, and other things made in them in the gazillions. So what we found is our product was not appropriate for this market, both from a price point of view and also in the way it worked. It's a very long subject, but the processes in the United States tend to be tightly controlled, tend to require a product that we make that will work well in these type of control processes. In China, that's not the case. The processes are not well defined. The materials aren't as good. The equipment isn't good. So they need products that can operate in a broad range. So we have spent some time to come up with products that are appropriate for that market. I want to talk about challenges real quickly. Hiring people. These are kind of some random comments. If you talk to people who've been in China for a while about hiring people, they'll want to get into the person's family, where they live, what their father did, that kind of what I call old school hiring approach. And I guess it makes sense. The problem is it's tough for somebody like me to make sense out of all that. I don't know much about neighborhoods in Shanghai or anywhere else, so it doesn't work very well for us. The key for us was to find enough good people as a critical mass for them to help us with the hiring process. The ability to speak English is not enough. One of the things I found is younger people who had the advantage to work for an international company have sometimes ridiculous expectations that you're going to make a great deal of money when they really don't have much expertise. It was a very interesting set of interviews I had with a number of these kinds of folks. The other thing is English is all over the place. If somebody's under 40, they probably speak a little English. If they're 22, they speak a lot of English. But you got to be careful about communicating. I had a long conversation with my sales manager, and I was droning on about something for probably 45 minutes, and I looked in the man's eyes and realized that there was going on. And I said, Stephen, did you understand this? And he said, I understood about 40%. So you have to continue to reinforce and go back at it and make sure that the communication is good. It goes both ways. It's not just the issues on that side, it's the issues of the people that you work with for a long time. So quite often, at least in our case, we didn't have a lot of people with international or much cultural expertise. You have to work with them to be sensitive about the issues on the other side. So one example I would offer you is this guy named Jim. Jim is about 6'5", about 275. Typically cuts off the sleeves of his shirt. Fairly intimidating guy. And he was hovered over this Chinese operator saying to him, first politely, did you read the manual? And his way of, clearly the other person didn't understand, so Jim's way of responding to this was, and those of you who don't speak English as a first language may have experienced this, it irritates the crap out of me. He said, did you read the manual? They start to yell. And to me, it's a very disrespectful way to treat somebody. So you have to work through those issues. And that is, for us, it was a bigger challenge than some. So 3 lessons that I learned. First of all, as I said earlier, I used to do a lot of planning for big companies. And, I get the whole comprehensive linear planning process, and it's great if you can do it. What we've had to develop is kind of what I call an adaptive planning process. Short feedback cycles, make changes on the fly, keep focused on what your long-term objective is, but be flexible enough to move things as you need to. Combine the best practices of what goes on in the United States and what goes on there. There's a lot we can learn from folks in China. They're terrific people. So what I try to do is work both sides of that street, make sure that people in the United States understand that they do some things really well in China. And there's many misconceptions. I don't have time to really get into it, but the advice and counsel I would give those of you thinking about China is go there and judge for yourself. Don't read the news and don't do your own diligence on this, because you may come up with different conclusions from there. So 3 years into it, where's the opportunity? I think the opportunity we have in China is better than the opportunity we have in the United States. I think if we're good at this, we'll evolve into a true international company, and by that I mean we'll have big elements of China as well as the United States, and more our R&D effort comes out of China as opposed to out of the United States. So